There we go. Holy shit, you guys. How's everybody doing? Get everyone breathe after that episode? Whew.
This is me breathing.
This is me. Yeah. We're going to do some deep breathing exercises after that episode. Wow.
Yeah, literally speechless. Like,
Literally.
there was so many things I did not expect to get in that episode. Like, a lot of the interactions, I'm like, okay, I saw this coming, but the context of them, the references, the allusions, just
they were beautiful. They did. Brian Cogman wrote that one and it shows. But before we get into the episode, I wanted to introduce my guest. Obviously, I am Joe Magician. You're on my YouTube channel. But my guest is Manu, or Manuclear Bomb. Say hello to everybody, Manu.
Hey guys, it's Manu. You might know me at Manuclear Bomb on Twitter and other social media. I also do a podcast, Scene of Ice and Fire, where I talk about the show scene by scene, except for the live episode recaps, which do the whole episode, but you're getting a little spoiler tease of that right now as me and Matt react to the episode live, because, man, I'm still trying to collect my thoughts. That episode got me emotionally a couple times, and maybe some parts I didn't expect. Like, we got through all that Jamie stuff, but then bam, that Theon scene when he shows up turns to Sansa's like, I want to fight for Winterfell. That was the first time, like, I just got crushed by this episode.
I did too, and I have a heart of cold, dead ice, and I basically almost cried three times during that episode. What was your cry count, Manu?
Yeah, well, I think that, and then when Jamie says Brienne's a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the literal title of the Dunk and Egg series.
That was so perfect.
Yeah, it's just like the words they chose. And then I think the third one, I think we're going to talk about this the most, is probably Jenny's song.
Yeah.
That Podrick, like, I just had a feeling Podrick was going to be the one to bust out the pipes, but that song, like, and how it tied into the climax of the episode, it's just so well done.
It was the chef's kiss. So I think I guess we'll maybe start back with the start of the episode. And a lot of us going into this episode very much thought this was going to be a Jamie heavy episode, and that turned out to be true. It opens up with his pseudo trial, which I thought that the way that went down, I did not expect it. Did you expect that Dany would actually side with Aerys and Viserys? That blew me away.
It kind of seemed odd, especially because they have been in the same room together at the end of the season 7, the Dragon and the Lion, or whatever, Dragon and the Wolf.
Mm-hmm.
So it just seemed weird to, like, throw that in his face right now, especially when Daenerys has been on this journey where she kind of has figured out that everything Viserys told her was poisoned, if not outright a lie, or misunderstanding the situation. So for that to be, what she threw at him. And then Sansa, I can kind of see Sansa's standpoint a little bit, but I don't know. It just seemed weird that was, Daenerys' first reaction. But I guess it can make sense,
Especially because, Barristan told her the truth. So she knows that what Jamie did was at least somewhere close to just. It seemed like she was more upset that he sat on the throne than anything, rather than, like, the actual killing of Aerys.
Yeah, it was her throne. But, yeah, I think it, also, if you think about it, like, maybe from the Ned Stark point of view, it's like him killing Aerys, that's one thing, but then to do it as a Kingsguard and then sit on the throne afterward, the aesthetic of it was really bad. But I don't really.
Jamie's bad at PR. I think
it's a bad look, Jamie. Bad look, Jamie Lannister.
Like, come on, man.
But yeah, and then Sansa, agreed with her. And that was kind of something I didn't really expect, that dynamic to come through in that trial scene.
Yeah, and Jon just basically sitting there. I basically didn't notice he was in that scene for most of it. When Dany finally turns to him and goes like, "What does the Warden of the North think?" It's like, oh yeah, Jon is there. He is the Warden of the North. I honestly wondered if he was going to bring back the conversation they had at the beginning. Maybe that was on Jon's mind. How Jamie was one of the few people that really kind of tried to warn Jon about what he was doing and what his vows actually meant.
Yeah. Because everyone else, Jon had this fictionalized version of what the Night's Watch was, and Jamie gave him the oh yeah, you're definitely saving the world. What you're doing up there, and at least Jon's response was pretty much in line with his character. That he's just like, yeah, Jamie's the sword. We can use him. He's possibly a good, he's half of a sword. I think the one thing I did like was Brienne coming to his defense, and specifically Sansa fully trusting in Brienne, because there were times in like season 6 and 7 where Sansa would kind of just shoo Brienne away so she could do whatever she was going to do against Littlefinger or whatever, get the Knights of the Vale. This was like the first time where she's like, yes, I trust Brienne fully, and I'm, trusting her on this one here.
Yeah, that was a very nice scene. There's a lot of reconciled trust, I would say, in this episode. People were bearing a lot of hatchets, even Gendry literally bearing a hatchet, proving how strong his axe is. That was also great acting, I think, from everyone in that scene, especially Nikolai, as he's sitting there like, I don't think I've ever seen him that vulnerable. Maybe the last time was when he thought Cersei was about to kill him.
Yeah, because he just has that like scared, like deer in the headlight looks when, the Lady of Winterfell and the Queen are basically on the verge of executing him or not accepting his service. And then Bran obviously throws him for a loop because Bran doesn't say anything but the things I do for love. Yeah, kind of similar to what he did to Littlefinger last season, where he just throws that one line at him and then just totally throws him off his game.
He's got to move. He's got to move, man. Chaos is allowed. Well, I think the chat really wants to talk about this, so let's just go into it. Let's talk about Jenny's song. I think for people that don't know the books that well, that may have sort of gone over people's heads. Do you want to give a brief rundown of what Jenny's song is and kind of why everyone's geeking out at the moment?
Well, I'm a little rusty on the Jenny of Old Stones, like the actual myth or whatever. But Jenny's song is supposedly the song that Rhaegar played for Lyanna at the Tournament of Harrenhal. We kind of get the clues from that in the books from when Thomas Seven Strings plays for the Ghost of Highheart, where, they get a bunch of vision/prophecies in return for the song. But that's kind of where my knowledge of it kind of ends. And I know you have a lot more to say on that.
Oh yeah, when Podrick started singing that was one of the moments where I almost teared up. I didn't expect that. I never thought we'd learn the words to it. So Jenny's song goes back to Jenny of Old Stones, who was the wife of Prince Duncan the Small, the son of Egg of Duncan Egg fame. Knight of the Seven Kingdoms got a huge call out in this from Brienne, but also this kind of stuff when it shows that Cogman wrote it. Duncan the Small was supposed to be married to the daughter of Lord Lionel Baratheon, the Laughing Storm, and he turned her down, kind of like Rhaegar, in order to follow his heart, and this girl named Jenny of Old Stones. And their romance, again, cost the Civil War. It's this kind of repeating pattern that these Crown Prince Targaryens just keep like saying, nah, I'm good with my arranged marriage, and just sort of going with it. And it shows up mostly, like you said, with the Ghost of Highheart. A lot of people think the Ghost of Highheart was Jenny's mother or something, because there was a woods witch that came to court with her, saw prophecy. That woods witch is the reason that Aerys and Rhaella were married. So it's this big interlocking pattern that goes back to Jenny's song. And like you said, at the Tourney of Harrenhal, it's not explicitly said that Rhaegar played Jenny's song, but he played a beautiful, sad song that made Lyanna Stark cry and fall in love with him. And we were talking about for the stream that the placement of when that song shows up and what happens right afterwards was really interesting.
Yeah, because it plays right into Jon standing in front of Lyanna's statue as Daenerys approaches him, and they kind of have their whole, we know the actual lineage or succession line that should be happening discussion. So, yeah, and it was also shades of Peregrine Took from Return of the King singing right before or right as the Knights of Gondor were charging Skillen. But that was kind of the precursor to the battle at the gates of Minas Tirith and Pelennor Fields and stuff. So I think we're going to see a lot of like Lord of the Rings like call outs and references between the Battle of Minas Tirith and the Battle of Helm's Deep, kind of in preparation in this episode and then probably into the next episode as well.
Oh yeah, there are tons of Lord of the Rings references in this. We got the whole everyone saying like before the battle, going and clapping each other on the shoulder. Although this time we didn't see Aragorn right off into the to go find a ghost army. Maybe that'll be next one for Jon. That was something else. Jon just landed on Dany and then And then her reacting kind of the way I predicted in my article I put up for Watchers, where she instantly recognized the problem that Jon is actually Aegon.
Yeah, because I mean, she kind of sets that up early in her conversation with Sansa. It's like she's really only had one goal, from the start of her journey, from the start of her character arc, from the start of her life, really. It was initially Viserys's goal, but then it became Daenerys's goal, that the throne was the singular focus. That's why she did what she did in Essos. That's why she came to the Seven Kingdoms, to take back the Iron Throne.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, she immediately got the ramifications. It's not like Jon's reaction last week where it's like, wait, my Ned lied to me? Like, because his whole thing was, he has an identity that's anchored to the honor that Ned Stark instilled with him. So that's where he went. Whereas Daenerys's anchor and kind of what's gotten her through her worst times has been her focus and her goal to, get to the Iron Throne and to take it. That's been her driving force for so long. So she immediately was able to kind of figure out the details of what Jon was actually saying when he was talking about Lyanna and Rhaegar.
It was funny, too, that she was the one that was skeptical about it. Jon, when he was told, he sort of thought about it for a second. He's like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Dany was really like, where's your sources? I was like, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Where's
and
the proof of RLJ?
And it's literally, it's your best friend and your brother who's like a total weirdo now. Like, basically, they're banking on those two people's testimony for all of this. Granted, maybe Sam has those books or scrolls, but it's a valid question.
Very valid. Like, she hasn't seen that book. She doesn't know Bran. I don't think she's talked to him at all, except for when he declared that, oh, by the way, your dragon's dead. I think that's the only interaction they've really had.
And I wonder what kind of thoughts are going through Jon's head, because you would have maybe not expected, but the initial reaction is like, oh, I don't care about the Iron Throne or whatever. But I think the way Sam put it to him last week about, you put down your, the crown to save people and do all that, would she, and does Jon maybe actually, because he's the kind of Stannis, like, in the sense that he would view it as his duty to, serve as king, possibly. He's not one to abscond duty, almost to the stupidity's end of that statement or whatever. So I wonder what he's thinking, because maybe Jon, a couple episodes ago or before he had that conversation with Samwell, it's like, you know what, I don't care about this, Iron Throne or whatever. We got to beat this or whatever. But now knowing, whatever we want to think about the execution of the Tarleys or whatever, I don't mind someone taking pause at the fact that Daenerys executed prisoners of war. I know that's kind of a hot take, but if that gives someone pause, I think that's valid.
That's true.
And, that's not something we think Jon would do per se.
That's true. I saw a really good comment in the chat that maybe Jon's ghost army's in the crypts, all those bodies coming back to life.
Oh, I mean, might as well just get weird now or whatever. But
I mean, all I'm going to say is in the intro sequence, the floor of Winterfell seems, they're doing that thing where it's popping up and down quite a lot, and it looks maybe a little rickety. Maybe they're saying that they kept saying the crypts were safe, and I was like, are they though? You guys are saying over and over and over again, the crypts need to be defended. They're safe. Which is it? Which is it? Game of Thrones? I think it's that they're not going to be safe at all.
Yeah, I definitely think about just going back to the opening credits. You also noticed that like Winterfell was like, they had those I don't know my siegecraft terms, but they had like the stakes and stuff and the fire pit surrounding Winterfell in the opening credits, which was a change from last week, kind of like showing that they're prepared for this oncoming battle or whatever. And I like throughout the episode when they showed the crenellations and the like different stakes that they would be tipped with dragon glass and stuff. So they're kind of prepared for White Walkers and Whites climbing and, breaching the walls. That's some nice visual touches.
Oh, those were very nice. Steven Stark in the chat brought up one of the other moments that almost made me cry, when the little girl with the scar on her face walks up to Davos, looking not quite like grayscale, but pretty close. The Davos seeing Shireen again. My heart almost broke for him in that moment.
Yeah, because you could just tell just the way he was kind of speechless. Like, this was a clear Shireen analog, and even Gilly interacting with her is kind of an analog to their interactions in season 5, because they had a warm relationship. And I like how Gilly knew how to play, not play the little girl, but, kind of like feed into her ego and willingness to fight or whatever. And that is something that she might be more familiar with coming from north of the wall and wildling culture where, the women aren't relegated like they are in like the Westerosi patriarchy or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. And speaking of Westerosi patriarchy getting taken down, I think the other big thing that we're talking about, we alluded to with the Jenny song talk, Sir Brienne of Tarth. Jaime fucking did it.
Oh Sir, my lady. Like now it's all true now. It's all so true.
Pod can finally say it correctly. Just call her sir. You don't need to go for the milady.
But that was so good. Like it was all getting to me because like how often does the character get what they really want? And
never.
Knowing how often a group of men have laughed at Brienne, especially growing up and her courtship, in the Reach and all that, to have like a group of men from all sorts of, and not that she needs men to validate her, but to have them like really not just Jaime knight her, but they all were like, raising their cups. Tormund was applauding, and Pod was just so happy for her. Like it was truly like there was a lot of love and adoration in that room, and I felt good. And then as soon as the words "A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms" came out of Jaime's mouth, and like just name dropping the title of the Duncan Egg novellas that was collected a couple of years ago, like just such the clear tie to Dunk. It just felt so good. It felt so good.
It was one of the more satisfying things I think I've ever seen. I've been particularly tuned into Dunk over the last few months. Crowfood's daughter and I were looking at how Strong and Dunk and their connections and kind of their children. And one of the important ones is that George has confirmed basically that Brienne is Duncan the Tall's descendant. And finally, a member of Dunk's family got the knighthood that they needed. Like that was a primary part of Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, is that most people thought he was faking. That Sir Iron did not actually knight him. And Brienne went the other way with her storyline, where people always ask her if she's a knight, and she always says no. Dunk always sort of like maybe, kind of, I could be. Yeah.
And it feels good, I think, having Jaime do it. And he's doing it with another one of Ned Stark's swords, or, you talked about how this is the first time Ice is kind of back at Winterfell since the beginning of the story. Granted, it's in two swords now, as the episode title was, but like to have it be done by Ned Stark's sword under Ned Stark's roof, because kind of the journey that binded those two together was, Brienne trading Jaime's life and ensuring that the Stark daughters make it home to Winterfell. And that much has been accomplished with Brienne and Jaime there to appreciate it. And just all of it, there's a lot of emotion wrapped up in it. And oh man, it got me.
That got me too. Even Sansa, it almost got Sansa in the opening scene with Jaime when Brienne mentions, I'm not sure if Sansa knew at that point that Jaime had actually sworn an oath to Catelyn. I don't think she knew anything that he did for Brienne. Yeah, that seemed like a total surprise, and it hit her like a ton of bricks. I think as it should, because that's one of the things about Jaime and Brienne is they are complicated characters, but it's this weird thing where behind Jaime's awful PR, he actually does quite a lot of good, but maybe not for the right reasons. Bran brought that up too.
Yeah, and I think appearances and what people perceive them as is kind of key to Jaime and Brienne's characters. With Brienne, some of it's her appearance, but also in the show and in the books, the fact that she's has a Lannister sword and is carrying around King Tommen's letter. People perceive a lot about her, or like who she's fighting for, or what she's actually doing because of that. But really, her motivations are much deeper than like the surface level appearance, and that's always the case with Jaime as well. So they really are a great foil, and honestly, I think Game of Thrones is best when those two characters are constantly in each other's orbits, because it's just such a rich part of the story, maybe the best dynamic on the show.
It's very good. Especially, I thought this was kind of a clever thing they did. Jaime is a terrible person for most of the time, at least as outwardly, but he gets all the honors in the world. He was the heir to Casterly Rock, Lord Commander of the King's Guard, the greatest swordsman in Westeros, basically outside of Barristan. And he didn't. Some of it he deserved, some of it didn't. Brienne is actually the quality person who never got any of the honors, and in that moment, Jaime kind of leveled the playing field. He gave her what she deserved, kind of lended some of his, I'm not sure if the right word's privilege, but some of the honors he probably didn't deserve, he gave to her in that moment.
Right. And we even see some of the way that JB's glorified in that scene itself, because they were talking about the, victories he's won, like, being the lead warrior at Pike. I don't know when that came up, but sure, he was at the Siege of Pike. But then he's like, yeah, well, I lost at the Whispering Woods too. So even Jamie's really self-aware that he has a reputation that really doesn't match the truth of what he thinks he is. But what did you think about that scene with Jamie and Bran in the Godswood?
That was something I was looking forward to pretty much the whole time. And I thought it was interesting that as much as Bran has been trying to say that, like, he's something else, he's the three-eyed crow, he puts it to Jamie in that moment, and he says, you weren't sorry when you did it then. And he's not, I wouldn't say he's angry, but he kind of holds it over Jamie when Jamie asks, like, why didn't you say anything? He's like, if I let them murder you, which is interesting that he put it as murder, that word choice. But anyway, that he was like, you owe me now. He's putting Jamie in his service, in his debt. I thought that was a really cool scene. And especially what Bran said about how if Jamie hadn't pushed Bran, he would have been the shitheel that he was at that time the rest of his life. It was pushing Bran out of the tower, probably one of his lowest moments, that turned his life around. And the same for Bran.
Yeah. And that's basically kind of the original sin of Game of Thrones, is that whole defenestration of Bran Stark and what's come, out of that. Because that changed Ned's plans about who goes south, who goes north, and obviously the cat's paw and all that. So, yeah, it was kind of interesting. I definitely picked up the fact that this was definitely a more personal conversation Bran's had than he has had with almost anyone, including his siblings so far. Just that pure mention of, you weren't sorry then, like, that's more personal than anything he said to Jon or Arya or Sansa, it feels like. And it's really cutting. And I wonder if we're going to get one more scene or another discussion between the two. But I think there is something to Jaime's arc, and a little bit with Sandor Clegane, is that the people that they wronged and the people that they really need to, get contrition or, show contrition for, or restitution or what have you, they're incapable of doing that. Bran's not really Bran. He can't really absolve Jaime at this point. All he can do is tell him, hey, you have something to do and it's useless to kill you. So it's kind of Jaime has to confront that with himself, because, it's an internal thing. It's like, it seemed in his conversations with Olenna and Edmure in previous seasons that Jaime was looking for someone to tell him, okay, you're doing good now. You're being merciful and you're not as cruel as your sister. And neither of them would give him that absolution. They both threw it in his face. And now that Bran's physically he's unable to absolve Jaime in any significant way just because he's not Bran Stark. Jaime has to understand that he really has to do it for the sake of goodness, for honor, whatever, how, in the face of apocalypse, he has to be, better, basically.
That's for sure. We got a super chat from the Steven Stark, who's a lovely man. Yes, my channel recently did get monetized. He says, show Magic Joe some love. Yeah, I do have super chats. That was pretty recent. That was pretty great. You guys can send them in. We'll derail whatever we're talking about to answer your question, or if you just have something that we missed that you want us to see, so feel free to send them in. I was just looking through the chat. Hang on, I saw something interesting. Yeah, that the other person that talked to Bran a lot was apparently Tyrion, in an off-screen conversation that apparently maybe went on for hours. I wonder what Tyrion learned in that moment.
Yeah, I actually have no ideas, but it's definitely possible it's related to some kind of vision or part of history or something that Bran has seen that we haven't seen as part of the show or whatever. And I feel like this episode specifically is setting up Tyrion to do something. Just like the way that Jorah and Daenerys talk about how he's a smart man. You want to make sure, and Daenerys is like, you go in the crypts. I need your brain. I know you can fight, but your brain is worth more than, your axe or whatever it would be. So they're definitely setting Tyrion up to do something, I feel like, and kind of centering how smart he is, and then giving him this long off-screen scene with Bran about like information or where Bran's been or what he's seen. I feel like something happened in that conversation that's going to come back, but I don't have any idea what.
Something big, yeah. They really wanted you to realize that Tyrion was very, very smart in this episode. Like, that was hammered home over and over and over again. It was a topic of conversation about people around him, not even to him. So that's definitely going to come up. One thing I thought was interesting is that Bran laid out his plan for how they're going to kill the Night's King. And Bookshelf Stud Michael, our friend, has often said that a key part of entertainment and like storytelling is if a character says a plan, it must fail.
Yeah.
So that's clearly not going to happen. The Night King may come for Bran, but that in no way will that probably be his end. So we're probably seeing that. It's tough to say what's going to happen there. If Bran's plan is wrong, although he did say that he knew the Night King was coming for him. I thought that whole little monologue from him was so interesting. Did you have a reaction to it?
Yeah, because this is the first time I can remember Bran in Three-Eyed Raven mode where he doesn't have an answer. I don't know to what extent he can see into the future, but he seems unclear on a lot of things other than the fact that the Night King wants him. And we kind of saw that in season 6 when the Night King took out the previous Three-Eyed Raven. The one thing I did love about that, we talk about people who've wronged Bran. I love that Theon volunteered to, heel guard Bran in the Godswoods with his Ironborn. And I think that's definitely setting up for those two to have a really touching scene in this next episode while they're sitting waiting around for them to draw in the Night King.
Yeah, for sure. It was it's also one of those things where if Bran's plan must fail and Theon's going to be there, do you think Theon is going and the Ironborn to get the proverbial axe in this one? I mean, Theon basically said, he said hello to everybody, but a lot of it was sort of like almost like a goodbye.
Yeah, I definitely got that, especially because we got the shot of him and Sansa eating soup together during the Jenny song montage. But if you think about, Theon was the one who sacked Winterfell. He kind of gave legitimacy to the marriage of Sansa to Ramsay in front of the heart tree in the Godswoods of Winterfell. So him kind of dying there in like the most Stark place possible besides maybe the crypts seems kind of very fitting for where Theon's going, because the first episode he kind of reconciled his whole Greyjoy side, and now it's just really him doing what he feels must be done for the Starks. So him dying for Bran, him dying in the Godswood, that all seems stuff that it's almost hard to pass up when you're writing this. It just seems poetic or perfect.
Exactly, and it's almost a direct lift of his plot when he comes back to Winterfell, his ghost to Winterfell, when he was still under Ramsay's thrall, I guess, during the books, where he goes to the Weirwood and asks the old gods. He gives a speech about how he's a son of Pike, just put a sword in his hand, and Bran reaches down and with the leaf and touches his forehead, and it seems like that's what we're probably going to get. But it's going to be literal this time. It's not going to be Theon going like, oh, that was weird, was it actually a face in that tree I saw? It will just be literally him.
Yeah. And it'll be a great, oh man, I don't even have words for it. It's just I'm such a big Theon fan, and like I said, that moment when he arrived at Winterfell, like I didn't know who they were calling Dany and Sansa up to see, and then when it was Theon, and just the way he turned to Sansa is like, I want to die, or I want to fight for Winterfell. Like, oof, it's going to be good when he dies next week.
At least they made it slightly ambiguous that everybody said goodbye. Everybody was like, all right, everybody, tonight's the last night. It wasn't like anybody was, actually only Tyrion. Tyrion was the only one confident. He's like, you know what? We're going to make it.
He's just a hot take contrarian on the internet. It's like, everyone's tweeting about how they're going to die. I'm like, no, we'll be fine. But speaking about last night on Earth, how about Arya and Gendry?
Whoa, that came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I was definitely 100% on the boat of the Stark girls should get consensual, productive, happy sex if they so wanted in the final season, especially because they're just older than their book counterparts. So it's not, kind of crossing any lines really. But man, Arya was definitely after it. I think even Gendry was like, whoa, what the fuck? Oh, whoa, like you have scars all over the place.
Yeah.
Which
Those
I
were the
guess is,
scars from the House of Black and White, right? Those were the whip scars, probably.
it could be. It could also be when the waif gutted her and she
Oh,
survived all that.
yeah.
Seems like these Starks, they just pick up these wounds all over the midsection and somehow keep coming back from them. But yeah, that was definitely something. I also think that Arya, like they showing off her archery skills, like that's something for some reason I think is going to come back, because that's something they played with in the pilot of the series, during the 3rd season when she was with Angai. We haven't really seen her do much bow work, and they have shown her doing a lot of, needle work and throwing daggers at this big staff. She's kind of your like all-purpose weaponry, or the one woman army kind of thing, but I feel like the bow and arrow in her is going to somehow come around.
I also picked up something while I was watching when she was talking to Gendry the first time before she jumped his bones. She was asking about what the whites were like, but the question she was asking was a little strange, where she was asking what they smelt like, how they moved, what they were like to be around. I'm wondering if we're setting up an Arya pulling a faceless man pretending to be a white.
Ooh, that's good. I did not think about that. When she was saying those words, I was thinking about her time as the blind girl, where she had to rely on her senses, her smell and sound to kind of navigate the world. And if there is a scene perhaps where she's running through the darkness of the Winterfell crypts, and much like that scene with the wave, she's like deprived of vision or eyesight, can't she navigate the dark? That was my first thought, but it'd be kind of silly to make Arya a faceless man and not have her do a face, because she didn't even really do one last. I mean, she opened up with Walder Frey, but none of the little things.
Sansa her masks that were like rubber.
right. Like the whole taking down Littlefinger, none of that was really face changing involved, and it'd be silly to dedicate 2 to 3 seasons of Arya face changing and not use it again. So the white would be great,
especially because they gave her special weapon, which I guess was like double-sided staff, reminiscent of the weapon she had in the House of Black and White. So she's going around gathering information about what's going to happen. She's clearly been in contact with Bran a lot. She knows a lot more than she's letting on. Those questions were very odd. And we know from the promos that she's, like you're saying, she's going to be running around not in the main fray. So if she's not doing that, a lot of people have thought maybe she'll take like Jaime's face or somebody else's and use that to kill Cersei, but you have a master assassin, you have somebody that can change their appearance. Is it possible to infiltrate a white army in the heat of the battle? Like, maybe it could be, because if you think about how the White Walkers function, there's essentially I think 13. I saw a count of how many we saw in the final scene of the episode. If there's 13 of them and they're controlling like maybe 100,000 whites, would they really notice an extra one?
Yeah, and if you think about that, potentially people are going to be dying during this battle and possibly being resurrected. So it's not like if, you could have a bunch of fresh corpses fighting for the Night's King. I imagine the people who died at Last Hearth are the ones who didn't lose arms, at least. They are still pretty much, full people minus whatever mortal wounds they had. So it's possible that, Arya could possibly even take the face of someone who dies fighting alongside her, and that she uses it later in the episode or something like that.
That would be pretty cool. Stephen Stark in the chat mentioned Simeon Star Eyes. Exactly. I think that was the direct callback for where that's coming from. The blind hero. So Arya was a blind hero at some point with the double-sided staff and fought hellhound. Seems to fit her pretty tightly.
Yeah. And another nice thing for the book fans is that when Arya was throwing those dragon glass throwing daggers or whatever, she was doing it with her left hand. So she is being Arya Stark of the books to the fullest that she can be, because she trained with her left hand to recreate book Arya. So it's kind of cool that they kept that running through the last season.
One other bit of fan service that I really liked. What is it? Erland Val in the chat. He says Tormund's childhood story is the funniest thing I've ever seen, and I really love that, because those are Tormund Tall Talker, Tormund the Mead King of Ruddy Hall. Those are that was his whole thing in the books. He would tell these tall tales. He would make them up in order to entertain people, make himself seem tough. And I thought maybe that was almost the most faithful version of Tormund to the books I think I've seen so far.
Yeah, especially when you heard him as like, I killed a giant and then I got in bed with his wife. I'm like, oh, here comes, Tormund fucks a giant. But no, it's like, I was suckled at her teat, and that's what made me strong as a 10-year-old. And that felt very in line with Tormund of the books, the one who would fuck a bear or whatever. So I really like that touch, because I thought it was going to get, come out like in the sexual way. But no, that's kind of the stupid Tormund stories that make sense to me.
The stupid, and he's BYOB. He shows up to the party already with a horn of ale already, or whatever that was. It was probably mead, just ready to go. They're passing out, passing out wine. He's like, I'm good, I got it.
Oh man, but that was kind of fun if you think about it. Just like some Lannisters, Brienne of Tarth, Sir Davos Seaworth, and Tormund Giantsbane. Just like one last drink before the war. It kind of made me think of that Hound and Bronn scene right before the Blackwater, where it's just like, this is our like last chance to have a drink. And the Hound himself was having a drink. He was just doing it antisocially before Arya and Beric barged in on him.
Yeah, I just wanted to be the sad dog on the wall. Did you notice that Tormund kind of was he was sort of shooting daggers at Jaime a little bit? And I thought it was very reminiscent of when Cersei saw Brienne at Joffrey's wedding, and then again at the Dragon Pit, where she realized that Jaime and Brienne had a lot of affection. She was like, I don't like this. It's like everyone around them is noticing the connection between the two.
Yeah. No, Jaime had that kind of shooting daggers, but also like, who the fuck is this guy kind of looked at. He kind of had around Euron a little bit last season, or when Cersei like painted the map of the Seven Kingdoms on the floor, and he's like, what the hell is this? He's just kind of like taken aback, but also like, no, I think it's there was a little bit of, kind of territorialism over Brienne that, because, Tormund walks in with his big swagger and like, this is our last night on Earth and all that kind of stuff. And then Jaime's like, but this is the real way to Brienne's heart. It's to knight her and like all that.
Grant her wishes. And that smile from Brienne. It's
like possibly the purest smile we've ever had on this show.
It was, we've seen Gwendolyn Christie's smile too, and she has a great smile. That was actually still an acting smile, because Brienne as a character is not used to it. So it was kind of like I don't even know, like her face was cracking and she was like not used to doing it.
Yeah. And I think even Brienne had that look on her face, like, I don't know what this is that I'm doing, but I like it. Like she had never smiled before, but it felt very organic to the way that Gwendolyn Christie plays Brienne of Tarth. That smile would be just so goofily big in the best way, just because this is like possibly the best moment of her life in a way. I mean, right before they all die, but yeah. I think one of the big conversations that I'm seeing is that we had all these sweetheart moments, and everyone who had a sweetheart moment is probably going to die.
Oh, Manu. Manu.
So, I mean, we saw that. We had a nice moment with Dolorous Ed and his brothers, Samwell and John, on the walls of Winterfell. I doubt. I seen Dolorous Ed seems like a guy you can knock off pretty easily, but he seems also cursed to live forever. So who knows?
The fact that he's Lord Commander is just perfect.
The other thing that made me think of the books was the way Sam and Jorah talk about getting Heartsbane or whatever. And in the books, Jorah's dad's last wish was for Jorah to take the black and join the Night's Watch, and for Sam to like give him Heartsbane and to kind of do it all around the memory of his father while they're about to fight the White Walkers and the Whites and stuff. That felt like a nice way to adapt all of that when they skipped over it when the old bear was actually killed in season 3.
Yeah, Carl Karsnark in the chat, he says, how sweet, and now you're all dead. Yeah, it seemed like that was happening a lot. Like, as Sam gives Jorah Heartsbane and then kind of walks away, you could almost see John Bradley going like, see ya. It was nice knowing you, Jorah. And I thought Jorah had a really good moment in this episode too, where I think when I definitely did, when he walked into Dany's room right after she had given Tyrion the public tongue lashing, I thought he was going to go ahead and undercut Tyrion and be like, I'm ready to step to be the hand. It was like, no, Jorah completely turned around. He's forgiven Tyrion for everything. And that was, that's one of those moments that makes me think like, yeah, he's probably really dead.
Yeah. And, Jorah's arc kind of in the show has been someone who, has been in love with Dany, has had trouble dealing with that, as well as to his loyalties that he wanted to get home. But now that he's kind of embraced the role of selflessly serving Daenerys without the, creepiness or wanting to bet her per se, and the fact that he's comfortable with other people advising Daenerys, and it's not just him. Because, a key part of season 2 and season 3 was that Jorah would tell Daenerys that everyone around her couldn't be trusted.
Yeah.
That only Jorah could be trusted.
Very toxic.
And now we have Jorah here who's propping up these other people around Daenerys. And that kind of shows that he's grown to the point where it's not all about him anymore. And I think he takes his service more honestly and earnestly than he did when it was kind of, well, I can do this, but also it might get me more intimate with Daenerys, whereas I think that's gone now.
Yeah, I think he's finally accepted that he's basically a Night's Watchman at this point.
Yeah.
Never going to happen. Sir Friend Zone is in the friend zone forever.
Yeah, but and I think everyone's kind of taking the black a little bit. Speaking of plans that are probably not going to happen, do we think Missandei and the Unsullied are going to make it back to Nob?
Oh no! Like I said with the whole thing about with Bran saying his plan, they said it, so it will not happen now.
Yeah,
you can't say your plan in a TV show, guys. You just can't.
Yeah. So, man, but if we go over everyone who had a good moment in this episode, basically everyone's going to die because there were so many sweet moments. Even like Sansa and Daenerys almost shared a really sweet moment together before the question of the secession and the North came up. But it was good to see them actually talking and not just being adversarial in front of a large audience, but having a real discussion, two people to each other.
Yeah, that's true. I also wanted to point out to the chat, we're going to wrap up in about 15 minutes. So if you guys have something you want us to talk about we haven't addressed yet, drop it in the chat. You can tag me so I see it, and we'll grab the best ones to talk about them. One thing in particular that that really stood out for me was, wow, I just lost it. It was in my head, then I did that little speech, and now it's gone. What was I going to say? Fuck. Oh, Pagan Girl 1 and let's see here, Kathy Fahey. They both made sort of the same comment that Jorah was making his peace with everybody. He went and found his niece or his cousin, Lyanna Mormont, made his peace with Tyrion, made his peace with Dany. I mean, they're warriors, so that's a thing that's probably normally going to happen the night before a battle where they all expect to die. But it was very touching. And actually, one thing that I thought was very good in this episode, I did a preseason podcast with Sue the Fury of Watchers on the Wall, and one of the things we were both really worried about was that they were going to Avengers Endgame this, where there's too many characters, there's not enough moments for each of them, and they're going to do these huge ensemble scenes where people aren't getting enough time to really explore it. And they really, in only 60 minutes, they did better than the Avengers did with way more characters, especially that Hearth scene.
Yeah, I think that was perfect, and how they kind of dripped characters into that scene, because it just starts with Jaime and Tyrion, and you kind of have a discussion about where they went with, I wish Tywin was here so he could see his sons fighting for Winterfell, because Tywin's at the core of both of those characters' journeys, and then Podrick and Brienne come in, who have very deep ties to Tyrion and Jaime, especially in the early seasons, and then Sir Davos walks in, and then Tormund. It was it just seemed like a very eclectic but very correct group of people to kind of share that moment. Just the way all the stories intersect, and how Tyrion was talking about how they've all survived so many battles. And one thing that I started thinking about last season, and it's all thanks to Hot Pie, is how much of this story is about just survivors and what we do to survive. I know there's a lot of other themes in terms of power or climate change or whatever, but just Game of Thrones is a story of survivors. And, some of these people have seen some really horrific things. Sansa, serving under Joffrey and Ramsay, And then everything, Jaime's been mutilated. Tyrion's, fought and lost battles. Or not lost, but, he's been taken down in battles, with a sword to the face, which always sucks.
Yeah.
It's just like all these characters have suffered trauma, but they've all done what it took to survive and to get to this point. And as a story of survivors, I think it's a really fascinating narrative.
Yeah, definitely agree. So we got some questions here from the chat. We'll just kind of try and run through these quickly. So the first one here from Paola Gonzalez. Is Tyrion in love with Dany? Is that what it meant where he said he could not be with sex workers anymore? What do you think?
It might be, just because I know based on like production interviews that some people have said that Tyrion is in love with Daenerys. To me, it was always, or the way I would have thought about it otherwise, is after what he did with Shay. Because we saw that scene in Volantis in season 5 where he gets a sex worker when he's with Varys and Jorah kidnaps him or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he just ends up trying to talk to her and not like, do his, not engage in soliciting a sex worker. So it was just, I feel like some of that's like, I don't know if it's behind him in the sense that like, what happened with Shay is something he just doesn't want to deal with anymore, or if it is, I love Daenerys and she's the only woman who can do it for me. I prefer to go with the Shay thinking, but it might be more the Daenerys thinking, I think, in the show.
Could be a little bit of both. Let's see here. From Steven Stark, we didn't even talk about Sansa and Dany having their sit down. I thought you are the Sansa defender among the two of us, the big Sansa stan. What did you think of that?
I don't know. Because like it made sense to me, but also it's just like we're so near the end or like the battle that actually, can you phrase the question again to me? Because I lost it because I was thinking of the answer.
It was basically, what did you think of the Sansa and Dany sit down scene as the mega Sansa stan that you are?
I like that it was positive. I like that they were initially warm to each other, and I like that it was Daenerys who's like, why are we not friends if we have so much in common? Especially because, like I was saying earlier, they are both survivors and they've suffered, some pretty horrible things. And I did like the dig at Jon Snow about how I used to date someone taller or whatever Daenerys said.
Never can let the Kit Harington height jokes go.
Right. It just felt a little bit goofy just because they were initially so warm with each other which was a reversal from their interactions the past episode. But then it kind of ended on the right note because Sansa is right. Like we've done everything to reclaim the North. We fought, we bled for the North. What happens, when you go and take your Iron Throne? What happens to the North? And I do like that they're both very honest about the fact that Jon is in love with Daenerys and that's really affecting his decision making. I think the one thing I really don't tolerate in those kind of conversations is when characters are either ignoring something or being kind of outright stupid about stuff. And I don't think that was the case in these interactions. I think everything they brought up was pretty much organic to both the story and the characters and the experiences they've had so far.
Definitely. And I thought they did another great job, echoing back to the article I wrote for Watchers, that Dany is very concerned about what's going to happen after this war is over if she survives. Sansa asked her point blank what happens to the North when this is over. Are we still a kingdom? And Dany takes her hand away, signaling no. And then going to the crypt scene, again, Dany is very concerned about the fact that Aegon Targaryen VI is alive. And I always thought that this would be more of a problem for Jon, but I think it's very clear that he probably doesn't want that. And it's going the other way of what I thought, that it's not Jon worrying because, it's probably because of his upbringing, knowing Ned and the speech he got from Aemon about like duty versus what you want. Jon's very much a duty bound person. Dany is a character that is much more driven by her wants, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's fair. She's had a good point about this, but I'm forgetting it. Damn it.
Live stream fail.
Yeah. Oh, shoot. Oh, my camera just broke for 30 seconds.
Whoa.
Oh, here but yeah, I think with the North, I think Pat Spinagle for Watchers on the Wall wrote an article this past week about how Daenerys is playing a similar role to what Stannis did when he tried to take the North. And I think back to the season 2, season 3 Stannis, where when Davos would say, "Why not ally with Robb Stark?" and he would say, "No, the North is part of the Seven Kingdoms. The North belongs to me." Maybe not in those terms, but he was also very territorial of the North. Whereas, to me, the political play for even the Southerners was always to be like, just let the North go off on their own. They have their own gods and they can man the wall or whatever. But people really want to keep that North and the Seven Kingdoms. It must have something.
It must be some reason they care about it. A question here from Michael Johnson. Isn't that a famous sprinter?
Yes, it is.
Oh my God.
Gold medalist.
Wow, Michael Johnson in the chat. This is amazing. Is it weird we didn't see the Night King? Is he even there at Winterfell? I think that's a very fair question. We didn't see the Night's King. When they panned up, I thought we were going to see him in the line. He wasn't there. Viserion's gone. And like we talked about with Bran's plan, that he said it's not going to work. Well, perhaps the Night's King has seen this eventuality coming. And like Jamie suggested, he will at no point make himself available unless something drastic changes. I thought that was a really good insight there from Michael. Yeah, Night's King completely absent.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he's not at all part of this initial vanguard or sieging force that's coming. Because like we were saying, we don't expect Bran's plan to play out. And one of the things that easily subverts that is just to have the Night King not in play at all in this battle. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's the case. I think we saw maybe a glimpse of Viserion in the next time on. But I don't think we had any indication whether like the Night King was on him or anything like that. But I think this is one thing that with all the promotional material for season 8, they haven't really shown us the Night King yet. I mean, he's on like posters, but in any of the actual teasers or trailers for this season, we haven't seen him at all. We've only seen like the horse hooves of the White Walkers and stuff, but little else. So I wonder if they have some other game or misdirection. The other thing I'm thinking about is they very, very loudly a couple times mentioned that maybe they take out the Night King and that's, you know, everyone dies. I've thought for a while that I don't think that's going to be the case. I think there's at least going to be something else to it, if not an outright different solution to it all.
I totally agree. And Bran brought that up in his speech about informing us what the Night King is all about with his erasing of memory and the revenge he wants. That the Night King has been killing three-eyed crows. I mean, that's not really their title. That's just kind of it's the whole thing. But the person that's in charge of the Weirwoods, the Night King has been killing them for thousands of years at this point. So if it was that easy to really just walk up and kill him, someone would have tried. And actually, I thought it was interesting that they asked if does Dragonfire work on the Night's King, and Bran says nobody's ever tried that. I kind of cocked my head at that. What'd you make of that?
Yeah. Well, I guess, there's so much, not secrecy, but history or memory forgotten about the original Long Night. We have these stories about the Last Hero or Azor Ahai or whatever you want, but and Lightbringer and all that stuff. But we don't really know if dragons were involved. I mean, the time period would have been right for it because, the Valyrian Empire was, if not in its height, the dragons, I believe, at least existed during the initial Long Night. But correct me if I'm wrong.
No, the Valyrian Empire came afterwards, but the Great Empire of the Dawn may have been around at that time, the precursor to the Valyrian Empire.
So either which way, it kind of reminded me how they talk about Valyrian steel in the books, because we haven't seen Jon kill a White Walker with, Valyrian steel in the books. And they talk about how dragon steel can kill the White Walkers. And they're like, Valyrian steel? But there's kind of an uncertainty to it. I mean, we all assume it to be true. I think we assume that Dragonfire can take out White Walkers, but they've shown themselves impervious to fire as far as we can tell.
Through it.
Yeah, so I don't know if Dragonfire is just different or, they're probably good for the zombies, but maybe not good for the generals.
I would assume that we could kill the other White Walkers, but I think from the creation of the Night King with the obsidian that powers him in his chest, that there is something different about him. That I'm wondering if we're actually going to get a scene where like maybe Arya gets a dagger in him or somebody swings Valyrian steel and it actually doesn't kill him because he is really the nexus of their race, I guess.
Yeah, no, I can see that, or something where they have to find a way to get that dagger out of him in some way. Like that's a kind of binding property or whatever.
Yeah, something that I don't want to say force field, but it's clear when he walked through the fire that the fire retreated around him. Either there's something magical, like some sort of ice or a power radiating off of him.
Right. And you mentioned it, but I really did like Samwell kind of figuring out on his own that he wants to kill Bran because he wants to erase memory and what it means for people and what they remember, what dying is to forget or whatever. And we talk a lot about some of these characters like Theon or Arya, you know, who take on multiple identities or who forget who they are or having to remember who they are. It's just a nice way to kind of add a big macro level theme to all the individual character themes that have brushed up on memory and identity and remembering who you are, and the North remembers. There's a lot of thinking along those lines, and it's kind of works as a great little thesis statement for the show, the season, the episode, however you want to think of it.
Oh yeah, definitely. In the chat, the people are counting the White Walkers in that scene. Some people are counting 7 or 8. Some people are seeing 10, maybe higher. Let's see here. Somebody made a good point. What was it? Somebody said 96 because Craster's given over 99 sons to the White Walkers,
and we've killed at least. I think we've killed
2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 4 or 5.
4 or 5. So that'd be about right. Assuming that Craster was the only person that populated the White Walker population or what have you. Yeah, I actually have no idea how many White Walkers to expect.
That was more than I think we've ever seen in one shot, except for the scene where the Night King transformed Craster's kit.
Yeah,
I would be interested in looking at that scene and this scene and see if the numbers match up.
Yeah, because that would be 12 or 13. I forget was in that season 4 episode, just like the black silhouettes in the distance. But we have lost at least 5 people since 4 or 5 White Walkers since then. But maybe the Craster baby we saw has grown up or is at least like a teenage White Walker. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. The number 13 especially is something that's very important in the book series. The last hero and his companions added up to 13.
Right.
So that would make some sense. Let's see here. Hey, I'm just gonna. Do you see anything in the chat?
I am not. I don't actually have it.
Oh my God, Manu. Here. R. Duraith brings up that they think Tyrion's going to come up with something after talking to Bran. I think it's very likely that Bran is maybe pulling a Doctor Strange here, that he is setting things up in a way, the only way they can win, and maybe that involves him dying.
Yeah, I think that's... I have a lot lower hopes for Bran's survival for some reason after the way they kind of put him at the center of, you know, the bait. Give me one sec. The way they're setting him up to be the bait and how we were talking about how the plan's not going to go well, probably the worst way that plan could turn out would be for Bran to die, especially because he probably has more answers. So to lose him would be a huge loss. Yeah.
that would be tough. Question here from Can Paisu. What do you think about the meaning of Jenny's song and who's Jenny in the timeline? Sansa, Lyanna's ghost. We covered this sort of at the beginning, but the meaning of Jenny's song is it's literally supposed to be about Jenny of Oldstones and Sir Duncan the Small, the Prince of Dragonflies, but it's really a song about star-crossed lovers and the things people will do for love, like Jaime says when he pushes Bran out the window. It's a song. I mean, it's the song that probably inspired Rhaegar and Lyanna to get together. It's the bittersweet song, I guess, the one that George has been planning all this time.
Yeah, I think it's definitely more of, I don't want to say just a mood piece because I think it directly ties to Rhaegar and Lyanna and Jon and Daenerys, but I think just the overall sense of tragedy that comes with it, or the sadness rather, not tragedy per se. I think, like you said, it's a bittersweet song. So I think it's just very evocative of the emotions that Game of Thrones is going to try to pull before, you know, it's all said and done on the show.
Definitely. Can Paiso clarify? They want to know the interpretation as in the future. What it mean? Is it like, is that song going to be predictive? I think I would actually want to see somebody go, and maybe I'll do this tonight, go and transcribe the words, because I don't think we've heard them before. I would really like to see what they came up with, and if that gives us some information going forwards. I mean, considering how important it is and how many different stories it touches, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, no, I don't know the words of the song. I don't know if they made them up for the show or we have a good list of them from any of the source material, but yeah.
That would be
I think you got a project.
I got a project this week among the other things I'm going to be making. Let's take one more and then we'll get out of here. We've hit about our hour we wanted to talk about. Got to make sure there's still meat on the bone for the stuff we're going to do this week. Let's see here. One second.
Yeah. Got to get a good one.
Oh, Dave, Doggy Doge, he says, so the only reason Night King wants to kill the three-eyed raven and kill the world of men is to have an eternal winter. Why did he try that now and not 1,000 years ago? That's that's a good question. That's something people have been trying to solve for quite some time. What activated them now? What is causing this? I mean, there's different ideas about maybe that the North stopped giving them children, and sort of fear for their own lives made them do it. Other people have maybe thought that like the Targaryens and the Valyrians landing on Westeros scared them because they appear to have been dominating for so long. There's also ideas about the prince that was promised, that maybe they are looking for a particular child, sort of like from the Tad Williams book series, Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. I think it's John and Danny's kid. That's just me, though. It is a very good question. Why now? What have they been waiting for? And it's something that's also informed by the fact that they appear to probably have some sort of future sight themselves, which is why they probably end up killing three-eyed ravens over and over again.
Yeah. I don't know if I have a great answer, but you have to just assume with the passage of time that there's less children of the forest, less giants, less people who are connected to that original long night or who might have that memory. And then specifically, Robert's Rebellion and like that kind of, 20 to 50, that generation or whatever. That's about as fractured as Westeros has been since, the Dance of the Dragons, if not the pre-Targaryen days. But, there's no dragons now like there were at least during the Dance of the Dragons. So no dragons, kingdoms at war.
Sure.
It could just be spontaneous, magical happenings or whatever at the hinges of the world. It could just be coincidence. I think of The Last Jedi, how darkness rises and light to meet it or whatever, vice versa. Just the dragons and the White Walkers, they kind of come together and they're kind of a package. Because, the Doom of Valyria, the birth of the dragons in the 14 Fires or whatever it was, those all seem to be, to an extent, some kind of spontaneous event. Perhaps, informed with blood magic and all that. But I think, I don't have any great answers. And I think no one really does, to be honest.
Hopefully we'll get them by the end of the season, or we'll get them in the Long Night prequel. That will probably be a major part of that story as they are going to the creation of the Night's King, I believe is the plot of that. So I think that's going to be it for us tonight. Manu, why don't you go ahead and remind people where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Manuclear Bomb, and you can also find my podcast at Sea and Ice Fire. We usually have our weekly recap of the new episodes go up Tuesday or Wednesday, so expect that then. And I'll be basically tweeting about it all throughout the week, except I might go offline to avoid Avengers Endgame spoilers this week. But in general, I'm basically all the time tweeting about Game of Thrones during the season, so find all my takes and content there.
Yeah, Manu is a very, very smart, and his Scene of Ice and Fire podcast is one I personally enjoy. It really looks at the story in a different way than other people do, where it's, well, you guys have a much more knowledge. The Scene of Ice and Fire is because you look at the construction of scenes, the visuals, how the show is being made out. So most of us focus on the plot. You guys do a little bit more.
We're definitely more into the production aspect. I've read the books a million times, and I've read The World of Ice and Fire, so I kind of have the basis in the story. But I love discussing cinematography, score, sound design, sound editing, and how those things can inform the story. Because Game of Thrones doesn't have 700 pages to tell you about everyone's characterization, so that's why they have to use wardrobe and soundtrack and everything at their disposal to tell that story. So that's what we like to break down.
It's a great podcast. For me, coming up, I'm going to be on Maester Monthly as normal. I'm going to be putting up probably 1 or 2 videos a week, including I'm going to finish the part 2 of Killing of a Ranger this week. And I got a lot of good information out of this episode in the last one. Let's see here. What else? You can also find me on Patreon at patreon.com/JoeMagician. Sign up, get episodes early, all that other kind of fun stuff, and make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share all the things. And let's take a look at who's streaming right now and where we can send you guys, because it seems like you all are still raring to go, even though Manu and I gotta go. It looks like LuciferMeansLightbringer is going right now with his post episode content. Alt-Shift-X. I know Secrets of the Citadel, I believe it's on her channel. Gemma and Kyle and all those people. Looks like Rawris is streaming. I believe maybe Smokescreen and Tony Teflon too. So yeah. Oh, Phil the Issues guy says Steven Stark. Yeah, he's going to. A lot of great creators out there. I hope you guys enjoyed our little reaction thing. We didn't cry, even though we wanted to. We really wanted to.
I cried quite a bit during the episode, so no more tears to shed.
No more tears to shed. Yeah. All right, so I'll see you guys later. Look for those videos, and I'll see you next Sunday night. See who I'm going to get as a guest this time. Thanks, everybody.